Good evening. It is a pleasure to be here today in this second panel, in this very important forum. I'm talking about the Interreligious Forum of the Americas. Thanks to the organizers that have made it possible to come together today in Los Angeles at this meeting. The topic today is crucial. We're talking about the religious perspectives on green growth and sustainable development in harmony with the environment. We all know that we are going through a climate crisis, an environmental crisis, which is challenging to us as the human race. And we have three panelists together with us today with great experience and with very interesting perspectives that will help us in this exchange. We know that the energy sources, which are low in carbon, up to the green agrotechnology, including new technologies, can contribute to ecological development that is much more balanced, satisfying the needs of society while protecting Mother Earth. However, new technologies, disruptive technologies, have the potential to revolutionize as well as to change the labor force, leaving behind some individuals. In addition to this, ecological technologies such as batteries for electric cars require extractive industries, replacing the exploration of oil with lithium mining. The ecologization of our economy requires an equitable and fair transition that ensures equality in the food, energy, and work systems. Also, forests are crucial for green growth. The value of forests and ecosystems expands well beyond the exploitation of carbon. They are the basis of sustainable societies, these lungs of our planet. Not only do they store carbon, but do they support biodiversity, regulate water flows, and reduce land erosion. Therefore, the topics to be dealt with by the panelists today, whom I will introduce, are three. Three key questions. How can religions provide information on the ecologization policies of our economies, protecting our planet for the future generations, and ensuring these equitable transitions? The second question is, can multi-religious collaboration strengthen the efforts for the defense of the environment? And the third question is, how can ecological transitions begin with the practices and infrastructures of religious communities and organizations based on faith? These questions will be discussed from different perspectives by the three panelists that are joining us today. I will introduce them from my left, from left to right. First of all, I'd like to introduce a friend for many years, Laurita, Laura Vargas. She is a Peru country coordinator of Interreligious Rainforest Initiative, IRI. This initiative will be explained by Laura. It is an international initiative. It is an interreligious initiative. Also, Laura is a coordinator of the Latin American and Caribbean Women of Faith Network. Next, let me introduce to you Reverend Daniel Tam, Reverend Daniel Tam, who is the chairperson of the Interfaith Solidarity Network. Also, Daniel belongs to the Episcopal Church of the United States. And finally, we also have with us today another friend and brother whom I admire, His Excellency Joseph Bosch. He is the Greek Orthodox Archbishop of Buenos Aires. He is from the Constantinople Church. Laura is Peruvian. Daniel comes from the US. And I mentioned the nationalities because of this, because Monsignor Joseph Bosch, he is Argentinian. He is the first Argentinian to be appointed Archbishop of the Church of Constantinople. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Laura. You all have 10 minutes. If you, I will tell you your time limit. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Humberto, for your presentation, for presenting the topic, and for introducing each of us. It is a privilege for me to be here among you to share with you this topic, which refers to what's fundamental. Life is in danger, and this has to do directly with the destruction of our planet as we know it. I have prepared 2 or 3 pages for this presentation. I will stick to my presentation to focus on the topic at hand. I would like to start by saying that we are facing a fundamental topic because we can understand economics, politics, including religion, from the point of view of how we treat the planet. Economy decides the life of people. And here I would like to cite a Chilean Jesuit, Jorge Costadoa, who said in a very interesting article on the #1 problem we are facing. And he would say that with regard to the ecological topic, we have to realize that economy cannot remain as it is. We cannot continue to grow, to consume, and consume to continue growing. This is a rationale which he is presenting. The planet is being exhausted, and despite this, we continue to contaminate it. New technologies are developed to get the most out of the planet, not to take care of the planet, but to continue being predators of the planet. Economy affects all other spheres of life, culture, spirituality, because values are disturbed. We are not focused on caring our brothers or sisters or the nature. We're focused on winning or earning more money, more power. So we have a negative change of values. I would like to highlight a phrase from the Dalai Lama, which impressed me a lot. From 2018, he presented a book, A Call for Revolution, and he would say that for the first time in human history, your right to life of your children is not guaranteed. That is a very strong statement. With this situation, we cannot guarantee that fundamental right. And the Dalai Lama would urge us to be compassionate with regard to living beings or to fight the tendency to tragedy, that is destruction. It is a powerful invitation to rethink the need of new paradigms. We are convinced in the Interreligious Council with regard to the initiative that we are proposing, that we need new paradigms for the development for human relationships. The answer that we give to this set of problems will enable us to know whether the faith communities are taking seriously this principle that brings us together, the love for our brothers and sisters and the love for nature as a single commandment. I can remember the words of Patriarch Bartholomew. Pope Francis mentions this, inviting us to recognize the sins against creation. Bartholomew says that human beings destroy the biodiversity of divine creation, that human beings degrade the integrity of the planet and contribute to the climate change by depleting natural forests and destroying water courses, that human beings pollute the soil, the air, and the water. All of these are sins, because a crime against nature is a crime against ourselves and a sin against God. We are facing a radical speech or discourse because it refers to the root of the problem, and it challenges us to make out of this time a time to think together on a new paradigm. And now I wanted to propose the paradigm of care that is developed by Leonardo Boff. Care is part of human nature. Boff talks about a Latin myth which says that care is not a virtue, it's not a way of acting. It is a semi-godly protagonist who created the human being in this myth. Who was the creator? A divine being created the human being, but based on the earth with the help of Jupiter. This is difficult to understand, the importance of this rationale of care for those who live based on another paradigm, the paradigm of dominion, dominating nature, dominating others to earn power and continue moving forward. Power, prestige, and build a world that has so dramatically marked human history. This is a suicidal rationale that is leading us to the abyss we're facing. If we have a few more minutes, I can tell you an anecdote at the end. I think it is very important that what we do with the new technologies to continue with ecological development has to meet two objectives: to reduce the technological development and satisfy the needs of society by protecting the planet. Religious can make a strong contribution to this. A while ago, we had a seminar in Peru organized by IRI, and we were told about the experience of the Mahikari youths in Africa, which are contributing to a very well-known project known as the Green Wall from Dakar to Djibouti, through or along 8,000 kilometers. It is true that progress has not been great, not even 5%, but there are visionaries from the faith communities that believe that making commitments among civilizations and sowing or cultivating trees, we can move forward. In Glasgow, this topic has been discussed again, and France has committed itself to provide support. We hope that this takes place because the desert cannot grow and people have to stop migrating out of hunger. The process of ecologization of our economy requires an equitable and fair transition that guarantees equity in the new food, energy, and labor systems. Also, we have to consider that forests are of the essence for green growth. Without forests, life is not possible on the planet. They are fundamental, not only because of the carbon aspect, but because they are the basis for sustainable societies. Not only trees store carbon, but they support the biodiversity, they regulate the water courses, reduce the erosion of soils. The following topics will be the focus of discussions moving forward. Today in Peru, we are given a good fight because, as you know, 60% of our territory is tropical rainforests. The Amazon forest is the greatest or biggest rainforest of the world, and its conservation is of the essence to guarantee life on the planet. From this rationale of dominion and power, we can only see development through the building of roads affecting the territory of peoples who live isolated. These groups, these ecological groups, these groups are trying to fight the rights that have already been recognized in Peru. And the Erie communities is fighting the different lies that are being spread to generate confusion among the population. It is very important to consider this because we will have upcoming regional elections, because there are some sectors that wish to retain power to facilitate the empowerment of illegality, as in the case of drug trafficking and illegal exploitation of wood or timber. We seek to strengthen these efforts, and this is the focus of our interreligious work. We're trying to do this, and the second phase of the Erie, we will strengthen religious leadership so they can be the first to respond to such dramatic situations. There are many potential possibilities in this road with regard to these topics and other topics. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for summarizing this, Laura, in 10 minutes. We will now hear Daniel. When the three presentations finish, we will go to the questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. Me llamo Daniel. I'm Daniel Tam. I'm a deacon in the Episcopal Church. And I want to thank my colleagues on the Interreligious Council of Southern California for this very generous, gracious invitation to be here today. I'd like you all to imagine there is a place in this country, let's see, it is in, the church, it's in that direction. It's east of the Rocky Mountains. As you come out of the Rocky Mountains, there opens up a vast area. It's a massive plateau. You can see long, long stretches, and you can see the sky in every direction. It is the ancestral home of the Lakota Sioux people. We call it Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota. But you can imagine when you're there, you can see and feel very clearly why the Lakota were so close to the Spirit. They have this prayer. This prayer is to the Creator. I'm only going to do the ending of the prayer, but the prayer goes to the Creator. They address the Creator, the mineral nation, the animal nation, the plant nation, and the spirit nation, and calls upon the power of each of these and thanks them for people's sustenance. And the prayer ends this way: you are all my relations. And listen to the verbs: my relatives, without whom I would not live. We are in the circle of life together, coexisting, codependent, co-creating our destiny. One, not more important than the other. One nation evolving from the other, and yet each dependent upon the one above and the one below. All of us a part of the great mystery. Thank you for this life. Now, all of us in this room speak this language. There is in all of our faith traditions these truths. And the U.S., my country, we have a great deal to learn from this prayer. It is a prayer of kinship. And I would suggest that what Laurita was saying, what you were saying, Laura, is the paradigm shift is one towards kinship. Our challenge is that the forces of empire have dominated throughout history, which is why we find ourselves here today, trying to find a way out, trying to be liberated from that dominance. In my own faith tradition, the theology of creation, as that theology as God speaking to us, finding the sacred in all things, has appeared now and then throughout our history, certainly among Celtic Christians, from Saint Irenaeus in the 2nd century, all the way up through Pierre Teilhard du Chardin, the Jesuit mystic and scientist in the 20th century. Care for God's creation is the core of the spirituality of St. Francis. To inform policy around the greening of our economies, protecting our planet for future generations, we need to recover the truths of these saints and mystics, preach the message of the sacredness of all things, and organize among each other and in our communities for systemic change. Can you all see this? Okay, so here is what we've had, okay, for centuries. We've had the dominant society, extractive economy, where the worldview, and it persists to today, consumerism and a colonial mindset. The purpose, of course, is to build wealth and economies of wealth and power. And the governance is backed by militarism. For resources, it's all about extraction, digging, burning, and dumping the waste. We need to move to this new paradigm, as Laura was saying, to a regenerative economy, where the worldview is about caring and sacredness. The purpose is ecological and social well-being. And the governance is from deep democracy. Deep democracy. Today is Election Day in the United States. We are making choices based on our values. I dare say that the starting point for deep democracy is to simply vote based on your values. It is our responsibility as faith leaders to remind our congregations, remind the people of God of what those values are all about. In my faith tradition as an Episcopalian, we have a baptismal covenant where we say we are going to strive for justice and peace, that we respect the dignity of all human beings, of every human being, and by extension, the dignity of the earth, oikos, our common home, God's house. And our challenge further is to strengthen multi-religious collaboration in environmental advocacy efforts, which is what we're doing here today. We are meeting each other. We are coming together and saying, this is what reality is. This extractive economy is killing us. It is opposed to the deepest spiritual values. We need to move to the regenerative economy. We're coming together, listening to each other. We're going to be going back to our communities and reaching out to them and the leaders of our communities to spread this message. It is a message of compassion, of love, of truth, and life. I'm chair of an organization called Interfaith Solidarity Network, and we try in our own way to advocate together as an interfaith organization, specifically for housing justice, to address straight on with the crisis of homelessness, and eco-justice to deal with the climate crisis. And we do that by coming together to make decisions about what we're going to advocate for. We're right now going to offices of state legislators, California state legislators, and we're focused on a bill that's going to deal with a regional solution for homelessness. 2 minutes. Homelessness, eco-justice, all of these things are connected. We're doing the same thing with LA Faith and Ecology Network, a new organization that's developed. A year ago, we came together to advocate for and move the City Council of Los Angeles to commit to reaching and achieving 100% clean, renewable energy by 2035. That was by forming relationships with one council member who then built coalition with other council members and getting the mayor to be with us on that. Our challenge as faith leaders is to elevate the sense of kinship that we heard in the Lakota prayer. Our kinship with the earth, our common home, communicate with each other and the people of God to say, it is all right. We can be co-creators with God. We can reclaim the sacred ground of this struggle for God's house, oikos, our common home. I look forward to the rest of our discussion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. And now we are going to listen to His Excellency Metropolitan Hirsch Bosch. Thank you. Thank you to all organizers for this invitation. It's a real privilege and an honor to be a panel here with these friends of mine, with all of you here today in these issues that are such a challenge for all of us and the difficult times we are living. I would like to thank Laura especially because of the sight of our Bartolome patriarch that she cited, that he was one of the many people advocating on these issues, which is a spiritual fight in a way, in order to make the modern man understand that we're really in a critical situation here, that the world, as Laura has said, is the resources are depleted and human beings cannot understand that situation today. Me, as a theologian, I have an Orthodox dogma. I belong to the Orthodox Church. So I can not make practical recommendations. Perhaps that's not the more adequate thing for me to do. But somehow I would like to try to interpret this quote that Laura made of this ecumenical patriarch. And this patriarch has talked during the years about the spiritual tradition of the Oriental Orthodox Church. This is a modern and adequate interpretation in terms of the realities we're living today. This leadership that this ecumenical patriarch has had within these issues is very rich in terms of being able to interpret right now, right here, a very antique tradition and very original from our parents that they taught us. Now, what is the cause? Obviously, something has been said here by our friend Daniel. He has introduced to this cause. The cause is precisely a very spiritual one. We cannot interpret this otherwise, and that's why I want to go to the core of the issues from a spiritual theological point of view. And since I'm Orthodox theologian, I'm going to refer to an author who, of course, is not an Orthodox author, but in order to be open to new things, probably you American people, you know him well, Dr. Dawkins. And this person says, so suffering and all kinds, so when you have proud, when you feel guilty, ashamed, and sad, the secret pleasure of suffering is addictive. Many people put their whole life to this addiction and encourage others to do the same. In order to stop this mechanism, you have to identify the pleasure of compensation and to give it freely to God. Referring then to this main topic that we're talking about, I think we all agree that this failure of humanity, and when I say failure, I'm taking this word from the Greek word amartia, often translated as sin, but in reality, a more adequate translation would be failure. So humanity's failure is based on a spiritual pathology, a deep one, very rooted one, and unfortunately naturalized and very often encouraged, which is selfishness. And this is manifested in great symptoms of the way we relate to each other. Human beings that are selfish express this systemic problem of their own ego and produce a degeneration in the forms human beings relate to all those things that consider as separate from the entity that he or she is. So this necessary distinction or separation that the alteration that becomes a closeness that this boycott system projects to itself as a homogeneous image, or rather a phantasmagorical image of reality. The only option in only to relate to that exterior, which is an antagonist exterior, is a power relationship. That is to say, a systemic reality that allows the ego to be summated to its necessities and its pleasures. This vision of reality, which is obtuse and a fantasy, makes it that the contrapart, anything that is not ego, consequently is seen as an opposite. One characteristic of this ego is to be the protagonist, and the contrapart is the antagonist, which is everything that is not the ego, and hence the natural resources are perceived as means to satisfy ends, and by abusing and depredation, and if necessary, complete destruction, when these things are seen as a threat. In this atmosphere, the capacity of men to discern is annulled, and at the end of this system, the actions of defense or depredation are actually the same as the fear and hedonism. Fear, which is also guilt, makes human beings destroy the environment to defend against a supposed danger. Egoism is because they want to find pleasure. So there's no discernment in this system. I could go on, but obviously I don't have enough time to elaborate all this. So how are we supposed to act, all of us, all the religious communities, in some kind of pluto-religious therapy? The basic Oriental Orthodox, which is called metanoia, and it could be translated as the change of our hearts, changing man from within. But here I will interpret this as recognizing our divine origin. San Juan Damasceno says, God made man innocent, right, and virtuous, without pain or worries, with virtues and with all kinds of goods, as a second cosmos. It was another angel was protecting and was protecting creation, and this person was king on all things on earth, but he had a higher power above. A very important point on this idea of confluencing different religions from the experiential point of view is the objective, precisely, of those as a medium and never as an end perceive the union of man with reality. However, those unions for which religious have different esoterical practices that are consumed at the same time, there's the understanding that there's a primary genial and primordial relationship between the creation idea and creation itself. Without exaggeration, we could say there's a mutuality in the origin between the deity and its creation. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, this translates in a reality of the created as God, in the same image as God. In the Christian tradition, man is a mediator between God and all the creation. This is an ontological characteristic. The reality of degenerating this primeval nature is a negation of God, and then a negation of origin and man's divine destiny. All communion also has ego, and the consequences we have described just now. It is our duty then, as religions altogether, through all their practice, ascetic or mystical ones, to be able to create awareness, that is, to get to the metania, as we said before, this transformation, and trying to make that human beings can conceive themselves, to be aware of their origin and their divine destiny. Once more, man has become God, but he's not God. And at the beginning, his or her destiny was being God, with God, for God. So, recognizing the origin of man and the divine destiny, this is a point of humility, an inflection point of humility that allows to create a common sense of belonging and to make people be aware of the way of relate to oneself with reality, with our neighbor, and necessarily with the environment. Of course, recognizing ourselves as a reflection of divinity, having in mind the ontological religions, implies a change of paradigm in the way that we relate to each other in these three spheres. So, people who recognize themselves never impose themselves to anything, but those people live life as a communion, as a relation between all natural entities, and he or she recognizes as a mirror that reflects the glory of God, the divine splendor, the divine eros. And the individual is not the protagonist. There's another reality, that of a person, which is to be in relation to. And domination is lost, that otherness is lost, and assimilates into a humanity that is diversity and is the body of the divinity. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the three panelists. Thank you, Archbishop. It has been a very rich panel in terms of what is happening to us as human beings, but also as a planet, as creation, as a common residence or house. In fact, in this connection, there is an urgent need of change of paradigms. But this has to do with our spiritual life and with our spiritual action, as you mentioned in each of the cases you presented. Without stopping any recognition, without ceasing any recognition from other cultures in that change of paradigms, to be able to dwell on into our own roots. This is what this is about. Somebody said to me, the prophetic voice is not necessarily a scream. It is a prophetic hope. And I think that in that connection, I think that you were talking about this from the spiritual dimension or sphere, but also from the point of view of this discussion or discernment that you have invited us to make. And I think that we can now begin with the different comments or the different questions that you would like to make, because I don't want to go on speaking. I'd like to listen to you again if there are any questions. Name, please, and also the organization you're representing. Thank you. Guillermo Strugo from the Church of Jesus Christ. I am sure that this is not the most intelligent question. It is basic. I think that many of us know the answer, but I'd like to listen from one of you, not necessarily from the three of you. Which is the perspective that we have nowadays when it has been proven that electric energy or lithium energy is a solution vis-a-vis the use of hydrocarbons. This morning we took an Uber in a Tesla car. It was not a hybrid, and the strength of that engine, what the driver told us, invited us to continue with the conversation. We know that the powerful economic interests are the reason behind this. What would be the perspective from your point of view? Because you're more knowledgeable than us. What would be the possibility of a real possibility that the rulers and the interstate organizations decide once and for all to give a chance for a final change in the use of energy? Thank you. Questions or comments? One by one? It will be the best, because probably we will receive other comments. You can raise your hands and I will take note of your participation, but you can begin by answering. Who would like to answer?
Well, it's clear. Oh, thank you. It's the basic facts are that fossil fuels are being burned by automobiles, and they are warming the planet because they are creating CO2 going into the atmosphere and not being able to escape the atmosphere, but to return, warming the planet. Basic scientific fact. So for decades now, people in power have known that. The people who manufacture automobiles know that. The people who extract oil and gas from the earth know that. But everybody's making money. So why stop now? So this is the struggle. I think we're making progress. I think we're very definitely making progress. If the city of Los Angeles is willing to commit itself to reaching 100% clean, renewable energy by 2035, 2030 would be better, but 2035 is okay. Then there are, if cities like this are willing to provide leadership for the rest of the state, for the rest of the country, other places are doing this too, all over the United States. But the forces of domination, of the extractive economy, of money and power are strong. But we have something stronger in the faith community. We have the power of love. We have metanoia, the experience of metanoia, of transformational change. And that is what we are doing.
Just wanted to add that, of course, we can have many strategies. For sure, it is necessary that we have different strategies, the different traditions, surely from their own grassroots organizations implementing from the moment we teach our children our traditions by including this as an urgent issue. This, of course, is a requirement. We will continue doing so, but we have to bear in mind this, and this is a concept inherent to our theology: cooperation, synergy, cooperation between what's human and what's divine. We can have many different strategies and techniques, but we have a limit. Now, he who does not have any limits, and if we are on his side, he can. And that same urgency is reflected in an answer that the nature has itself. if our strategy, our plan, if all of our advocacy, if all of this is not able to act, nature will act. Nature has its own corrective actions, and we see this every single day, very violently. Even in this case, humans are unable to understand. And I repeat, what has to happen to us so that man reaches the metania experience? Natural law and the spiritual law will act, and they are acting. But I will repeat, and this is the end of what I'm going to say, we have not only to trust what we can do on our own. If we get God out of the process, then our religion will become a non-governmental organization. Religion doesn't have as a principle or core man. The core of religion is God. If we get God or take God out of the picture, what is the sense of this? Because with God, as the prayer said, there is no distinction, there's no separation. All of this comes from above or from our inside. That is a very good question, and we could talk about this issue, but there are some basic points here. The first one is that the development model, regardless of the name we give to it, has brought us to this point in time. This has not been a fortuitous event. No, it's not the result of a cataclysm that killed our dinosaurs. This that has happened, that has become more severe in the last 50 years, is a process that was being looked at since the Industrial Revolution, but that became more serious in the last 50 years. But there are no limits, because the rationale behind all of this is winning, money or power. The more I earn, the better. If there are people suffering, bad luck, tough luck, but I will continue earning. We have lost this capacity, this ability to relate. We do not know how to relate as human beings. We do not know how to relate as humans with nature. And it is not that nature is God. We are not talking about a pantheism system. The Book of Facts. This is the God in whom we believe, in whom we exist. It is God, and this has been broken because a new rationale is the rationale about winning and earning, no matter the casualties. Because at the end of the day, there are some people that have to have power and others have to obey. And that's bad luck. We don't say that, but I have been lucky because I have been blessed by God. And your neighbor, your brother, your fellow man, he is not an inferior being. He is your neighbor. Knowing that we are part of a humanity which is a gift from God in the same place, we have to recuperate the charter of the earth. There should be a new awakening or reverence towards life. We have lost this. Earth is an instrument to win more. We have changed the rationale, and this has to change. We have to work with regard to this point. And I understand that humble people understand this rationale better than the powerful, because they know that their lives depends on that very small plot of land, so they take care of that plot of land. Think about the green wall that has made small progress, and you should see the community so happy to receive a small tree that they can care for. I would say this to an ecological scientist. How long will that tree take to grow? And he would say to me, sister, if it is green, it is releasing oxygen and sequestrating the carbon. It doesn't have to grow. It is already activating the process. There is a very big effort for our communities. I was in a parish church, very well organized with many halls, and people said to the priest, "Is this a green parish church?" "No, we don't even have a garden. This is made of cement." And the people said, "We will fight so that the priest gives us a garden to cultivate our trees." There is a lot to be done. People have to be convinced we are not God. We do not have the right to destroy the works of God. And God gives us many gifts for us to use and transform this situation. Thank you to the three panelists. Thank you, Laura. What you mentioned, this reminds me of what Pope Francis says, the comprehensive transformation, or the metanoia, the prayer from the Dakota peoples, for instance. For sure, we're at a crossroads, as the last report from the United Nations on Development, the last report on human development, mentions the Anthropocenos and the challenges for new development paradigms. We are at a stage where human decisions have damaged us, this stage of the Anthropocenos, and this relationship that Laura mentioned in the last 50 years. Recently, there was this anniversary, the first meeting in Stockholm, 50 years of concern with regard of what is the common house or the common residence, 50 years, where it has not been possible to achieve much. On the contrary, there have been drawbacks. But now we will receive new questions or comments, or any contributions that you'd like to give us. Any comments or questions? Name, Edgardo Versa. I'd like to mention the following. While I was listening to you, I felt this passion for taking care of what God created, about carrying our environment. I'd like to make the following question. We all know the information, the data. What is the present status of our environment? What would be the message that we could communicate to the decision makers, both men and women? Which would be the message, a more innovative message, or stronger message, where we can be heard? The topic is, it is an urgent issue. Would you think that the communicational strategy is not working well? I think that the communicational strategy depends on the spiritual strategy. If we do not believe it, then others will not believe us. So what is not working well? Where are we failing in with the communicational strategy? We have been talking about this for the last 50 years, and as Humberto said, everything is not working well. What is failing? What we're communicating? Do we have to be more aggressive, more creative? Or is there something more serious going on? Because when I convert, I generate conversion. But if I do not believe this is a question. What we're saying right now, do we believe this? There is only one way to answer this question. And the only answer is setting the example. If I do not teach my son or daughter, if I don't tell or teach youths, if I do not include in my religious agenda this topic with material actions from my own perspective or from the perspective of other faiths, there won't be any reaction. The message is clear. There is no time. Laura said this, but Laura is interpreting data, information, as you were saying. The world is going to end. What are we waiting for? There are people that have more data, and some people say, how much more time before the world ends? We have time. We won't have to face this collapse. So we have this question. The big question is this one. Do we believe what we're saying? That would be my question.
Daniel or Laura?
I think if I understand your question, you are saying, what is it that we have to communicate? How do we need to strengthen our communication about what the crisis is? Okay. To leaders who will make a difference, right? Who will change things? Was that basically your question? Okay. I think that's happening, but we need to do more. I think what's happening here today is helping us. It's reinforcing what the message is, that it begins for us as a spiritual solution, beginning as a spiritual solution, and the understanding of that we live in God's house, that we then communicate among our own communities of faith, within our own traditions, in our own cities, in our own countries, and build networks of people. If I have 3 people at my church who join with 3 people in a synagogue and 3 more people in a mosque, and keep replicating that coalition, building of that coalition, then it's not just me with my few people in my church who will achieve nothing. No, there will be no change. Maybe we can change our own behavior in our homes. Maybe our churches and our mosques or maybe our churches will change, and a handful of churches will change. But if a church, together with a synagogue, together with a mosque, together with a temple, if we all begin to change together, then we are building collective action. The only answer that I understand, and I come from political organizing, is collective action. Because by ourselves, we don't really accomplish anything. Together, we can accomplish things so that the message becomes clear to the leaders that, look, all these people, Jews, Christians, Muslims, Baha'i, Buddhists, look, they're all working together. They want this. These people vote. Ultimately, these people vote. That's why I keep going back to that as the starting point for political change and taking responsibility for our democracy is voting and being willing to stand up. Being willing to chain yourself to, BlackRock, the financial institution, which is funding the climate crisis. Since the first Paris Accord in 2015, I think it was, untold billions of dollars have been invested in the extraction economy, even with knowing what we know. So it's a big, hard fight, but we have to begin.
I would like to start by taking something that you've just said. We have to start. We have to begin. I see this in young children. Young children, when they learn something, they never forget. And when those children, for those kids to grow knowing that the tree is their brother, their sister, and they give air and they have to take care of the trees, and that animals are important for life, are God's gift given to us, and we have to be grateful that when I open the tap, the faucet, I need to close it very quickly, only to wash your hands very quickly. So these very small things actually do create a culture of care. We don't have a culture of care. We have a culture of spending, of waste. I put a lot of my dish and I eat. Perhaps I just put it in the dish. I put it in the... No, this is not good. We have to begin to put it in our head that there are fundamental changes that need to be made. We have a house with 8 rooms and all the lights are on. Why? We only need light in one room. Believe it or not, those things are very important. They install a mentality of care, also for other people to enjoy those resources. We really do not understand that we are equals. That person in Africa with no food, that hunger affects me personally. It hurts me. It's not acceptable there are people suffering from hunger when there's so much waste in food and things. This cannot be the case. So I think people go to churches because they have faith. They want to listen to a message, and that message needs to be related to these things. We cannot talk about theology in the air. We have to talk about theology from the basis, from the earth, with very concrete examples of what is happening around the world, how this challenges us. And they're very nice experiences of children growing up with a very different narrative, and they have been to Africa. They went there to know those communities. When you have that sensibility, I think that's very important. We have to have that meaning of creation as God's gift, not for me, but for the ones that come after me. And that's why I have the responsibility of giving back that gift in the same way I got that gift originally. This is key. And this has to be communicated. We have to communicate, to share. I've seen very nice experiences happening, but they're still small. They're not massive experiences. And that's why we need that local and regional governments begin to learn and to get familiar that this is crucial. Our life depends on this. So what do we do? So there's a lot to be done, definitely. I believe churches do have the real possibilities in their hands. Thank you to all three. Thank you, Laura. Don Julio Murray, please go ahead. Thank you very much for these presentations. I think you're so right in the sense of creating awareness and also calling for a transformation. Also, and to take care of our common house. But we should also talk about people. People who have to live with the effects of not taking care of this common house, this common roof. If we have respect and love towards God, then let's do the best we can to take care of what God has given us. However, life of human beings is in danger. Once and again have we heard how people who live in countries which are islands, how they will simply disappear, those countries, because the sea level is increasing. And this is very impressive to hear the First Minister from Barbados to call attention to governments during COP26. It was also quite impressive to listen to the amount of young people that were calling religious people attention towards saying, you have to do more. Because if the human being is not told about the impact he or she has on other human beings, it seems that we will not capture this message. And we're still going through situations in some faith communities that if they don't see that the problem affects them, they won't start having trying to cause change. So part of the problem seems to be that we haven't put enough information on the media because we do it every now and then. However, life of the people depends on us creating awareness, and also we do and take care of concrete actions. So how would this be? Each religious leader in the country where he or she lives should be able to get close to the government and saying, have you signed the Paris Accord? What has our country done to respond to that Paris Accord that we have signed? That would be interesting. Because then the religious leader is not working only within communities, but is also talking to the political leader who has signed an accord and has done absolutely nothing. Within the Paris Accord, there is an area called loss and damage, and governments have signed up for helping and give a response to all the harm produced. However, unfortunately, reality is telling us that not even 50% of the compromises have been met, and because of the bureaucracy that exists, etc. So the issue is a serious one. Even when governments are signing these things, they are not taking these things seriously. This can then not be a campaign that we do sometimes. We need to be more constant, more conscientious, and keep these issues alive in those places where they need to be alive, because we're talking about human life that is being affected, and we're talking about people that will die. And the younger generation who is asking us, what have you done? What have you done? we will inherit the things you haven't done. That includes each one of us. We cannot think that only governments are responsible for these things. I have responsibility. You have responsibility. We all have a responsibility. We have to work on these issues daily, every day. I remember during COP26, all media had all the information. After COP26, media stopped giving important information on these issues. It seems that these issues do not sell newspapers. However, the problem is that the issue is that we do our work and look for information on what the impact on human life is, simply because we're not taking these issues serious. The impact of climate change and how important it is to take care of our common house. This common house, we're not alone there. There are people there, people who are being affected by this situation. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bishop. Also, as a witness of the last COP26 in Glasgow, as Mr. Murray has said, thank you. I think you also gave some kind of input for our table here, our panel. I think you were talking about selfishness, metanoia, the necessary conversion, etc., etc. I was once asked, talking about ecological conversion, I was asked whether there shouldn't be a structural conversion, a systemic conversion. And I think these are two things that are related, because once a Brazilian economist, who is also a theologist, told me they don't believe our prophetic declarations because we haven't stopped consuming in our lives. So that was a good debate that was generated there, and it has to do with the structural changes. How do we get there? Well, we have to be credible, right? We have to be believable, as we just heard. Things are demanded of us, but when they are doing that, they say, you also take part of this, right? Well, I wanted to leave you the last words. We only have 10 minutes, so please go ahead. Each one of you could give their closing words. I would just like to comment on Bishop Murray's comments, especially in the countries in Latin America or less developing countries. There seems to be different urgencies, or urgencies that are more urgent than the ecological problem, right? For example, ecological problems in these countries, it comes in something that is not a priority. So somebody could go there to the government and talk about the problem, and this person in the government, if he will say, yes, Father, yes, Bishop, but he or she will say, I have a mortality rate that is like this. I have a debt problem that is like this. I have the health system that gives me this deficit, and the senior citizens happen. You're telling me about this? I'm not justifying it. I'm simply putting the problem on the table. That perhaps in Stockholm or in more developed countries, they can think in a different way. I'm not justifying it. I'm simply describing these issues. So, do politicians truly believe in each country, developing country, developed country, advanced country, the priority it deserves? No, clearly this is not the case. Now, are there other urgencies that are even more urgent than urgent? You were saying, yeah, we are the victims and the coming generations are the victims, but there are people dying of hunger right now. We have seen this with the pandemic situation. And without the pandemic situation, we would have seen the same. We all know this, those people who live in regions that are poor. Uh, there are people that die because of drugs, because of narcotics. Yes. As Laura said, the power of ambition is huge, it's very strong. We shouldn't think little of that. Now, and I will finish with just this idea. As the book says, Jesus was asked, and then who will be saved? That was asked, who will be saved then, if this is how things are? So, now truly, my final words. The concept of cooperation. We do what we have to do, and then God will do what he has to do. He multiplies his actions, but there's only something we can do, but always being coherent. If there's no coherence, then no one will believe us. If I say one thing, but then I do another, this double standard, well, perhaps I'm a great theologist, but I don't believe. I could have this hanging, I can have all these robes or costumes, if you will, but there's no coherence in what I'm saying. So I repeat myself, the final question: do we really believe? Thank you. Umberto has had to go just 1 minute, and he asked me to apologize on his behalf. I believe that you have said something that is very important, a coherent life, right? How was Jesus remembered? His generation, so it's Acts chapter 10, if I'm not mistaken. Jesus went through life doing good. And I believe this is a very powerful message. How do we want to be remembered? As people that assumed a huge challenge within a very complicated times. And that challenge is to become sisters and brothers with nature. I think here we see a fundamental axis here. In Peru, in the Interreligious Council, we talked about this, the paradigm of care, right? The developed world has the power paradigm, slashing power that destroys the weak one, slaves the weak one. But in the human heart, there's also the care paradigm. And allow me to tell you an anecdote some of you have already heard from Margaret Mead, the famous American anthropologist who died in the 50s, last century. Margaret Mead was in one of those important conferences where she would normally go, and at the end of the conference, she is being asked, "Doctor, according to your experience, when does humanity really is launched? How do we show up as humanity?" She's being asked. She thinks about it for a minute, and she says, when we find a femur bone that has been broken and then cured. People thought she was going to say, when we find a ball or a weapon, a knife. No, she said, when we find a human bone that has been cured. And she explains further, elaborates, and says, in those times, humans or humanoids or whatever you want to call them lived just like mammals, right? In in groups, in flocks, and they move around, they protect each other. But the one who was unlucky enough to have a bone, a femur bone broken, he fell from a tree or whatever happened, the bone was broken, well, nobody would go back and help. The flock will go on. But when we find that the bone was cured, it means that somebody from that group took him or her, took care of this person. And that's why we find that femur bone that is cured, it's been cured. So humanity is being launched as humanity, not when there's domination, but when it takes care. I think this is a lovely learning, right? So this is within our heart. We talk about domination to dominate the other, which is real, it happens. There's also within people also this care.
There's always in our heart that care for our fellow. If the person is fragile, I care for the person, I heal the person. I think this is beautiful. I think that was a moment humanity took off. And I think that we have to look at this in relationship with this great commandment: love nature, love God and love nature and your neighbor. It is a single commandment, and love the nature where we have to live because we don't live in the air. Really. Thank you. Yes.
So, it's not lost on me that my colleagues are de Sudamerica, Argentina, Peru, Argentina. And one of you quoted Leonardo Boff. Yeah. You did, yes? So I think of the way we act now. I think in terms of the liberation struggles in South America and Central America, in El Salvador, throughout, of how they came together to organize. They came together in base Christian communities, and then all together talked about, well, here's the problem. What are we going to do about it? And they studied the Bible, and they found the answers, and then they went out. Now, in many cases, they decided we need to go to war. Well, if we replicate this strategy, we can come together, we can see what the issue is, and what we need to do, and then we go to the work of transformation, of transforming first our behavior and this community of care, this culture of care. What are we doing in our lives? What is our church doing? What is our church doing? What are our networks of mosques and synagogues and churches doing to change? How are we working together to advocate, as Bishop said, to come alongside that elected official and say, so what are you doing? This is what we're doing. What are you doing? So I want us to leave here being hopeful, because this action is happening right now. I know it's happening in many places in the city of Los Angeles, in the state of California, and in the United States. I know that it's happening. And what I understand is that it's happening all over the Western Hemisphere. And I know from other organizations, Green Faith, for instance, it's happening all over the world. We are not alone. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Now we are almost coming to an end. Thank you very much. We could stay here for another 2 hours, but we have to comply with the schedule. I would like to thank you, thank each one of you, but also the community, those who were present today, listening to us, participating, and probably making their own reflections in silence. We need these new narratives as well. We need to know about these people who do things, who say things and do things. We were talking about this culture of care, this theology of care, this that calls or summons us to think about our neighbors. I could not stop thinking that all this care issue has to do with the economy of care, that has to do with women. All of this economy of care that is based on the Bible, that has a theological basis. Women thought about care as the ability to relate. Economists always think about how to replace consumption assets with other assets, and the ability to relate are those assets that you were talking about. We have to take them into consideration, and women economists that created the economy of care and the circular economies that was presented at the COP26, the person that created the donut economy that is applied by the city councils. City councils are using this regenerative economy, so not all is lost. What we need is information, more and more information, including information on our own conversions. So thank you so much for your presence this afternoon. Again, I'd like to give a round of applause to you, to the panelists. Thank you so much.